I guess the first thing is, could you introduce yourself? Tell us where you're from.
Okay. My name is Dr. Walter Greason. I am from New Jersey. I run a company called the International Center for Metropolitan Growth. I am also a professor of economic history at Monmouth University.
Okay, great. So what brings you to Planet Deep South this year?
I attended last year, friends with Julian Chambliss, John Jennings, many of the attendees, Ronaldo Anderson. I've been doing Afrofuturist work long before I was ever a professor. And so I published stories back in the 90s and been a computer designer since '83.
Okay, and speaking of Afrofuturism, how would you define it related to your own work?
Essentially, it's the recreation of human activity to repair the damage done by Eurocentrism.
Okay, and with this conference, focusing a lot on Afrofuturism. Sorry, how do you think it's been going so far? Like as far as how it's mediated these, created these kind of discussions going on.
Yeah, the immediate success is the healing of the participants. We all struggle in our own spaces and locations with colleagues, supervisors, even students, who don't understand what the project is and what feeds us, what makes us whole. And so just having the event is tremendously cathartic for all the participants. Beyond that, the actual kind of intellectual development and maturity of the concepts, this event does more to generate the sense of what Afrofuturism is, what are its possibilities, than any other event in the country. And they've multiplied in the last decade, and this still remains the premier event.
Great. And this is, since it's focusing on the South this year, where would you like to see it eventually expand? Like, just focus on like United States, the Americas, maybe globally?
Absolutely. We want to see this grow and see how we can locate them in the world. But I think we need to be very careful about naming the kind of locations and regions that we move to, because I think where we're most desperately needed are the places that may be hardest to get to.
Absolutely. And what panel really inspired you, I guess?
In this, I would say Stephanie Troutman's presentation at the luncheon and discussing Kais Lehman's work. Absolutely brilliant, ripping, beautiful engagement with how we see ourselves in relationship to the people who love us, and then push ourselves to love ourselves through their eyes and ultimately through our own. Just a surreal balance of both the creative and the critical that I wish more people could have enjoyed. The session that was public for David Banner and the students from Jackson State, as well as Kais. There's nothing else like that that's happened. It's challenged historically black colleges and universities. And the opening statements by Natasha Womack, Ronaldo Anderson, just set the tone and really framed the debate, to kind of make this the extraordinary event that it's been.
Good. And speaking of students, have you had a chance to interact with any students from Jackson State as far as like how they've taken the event?
Certainly the major town hall was extraordinary, and I got to meet a number of students, but I think I got to interact not just with Jackson State students, but local Jackson youth who are building enterprises like Offbeat. And so going to Offbeat and meeting with guys who come into there and building new enterprises, that's the heart of my work. And so being able to build a sense that Jackson can become an economic leader in the United States and around the world, I'm taking their cues about what kind of projects they want to build and what I can finance for them going forward. And so that to me is the most inspiring takeaway.
And speaking of your work, how does Afrofuturism influence it or inspire or inform your work?
Yeah, people ask me that a lot because I work in a really hard-nosed field. Like history as a whole deals with facts in the past and evidence, and then it seems like, why would you do futurism at all? Like you're grappling with. But what theoretically I understand is whatever is the past was at once someone's future. So wherever you draw the evidence from, someone had to kind of make a breakthrough, a creative moment to move us to the evidence that survives to now. Afrofuturism is particularly important for my work in economic history, because what we've done is essentially racialize poverty on a global scale, so that people who are excluded from the creation of wealth in the northern Atlantic, some sociologists will call this the global north, that have been the victims of industrialization and globalization. Afrofuturism is one path forward to break that mold and to redefine what we consider a common wealth for all people. And that's what my work is in the 21st century, is reimagining financial institutions and patterns of wealth distribution.
That's a great answer. Do you have any final words for the people going to see this? Since we're going to archive it, so hopefully future generations will be able, because you know the idea, once it's on the internet, it could stay forever. Like, what final words would you like to give to people interested in Afrofuturism and these kind of topics?
A couple things. There are two pieces to this for me. You make me think of my two children who are now 13 and 4, and when they will have children and grandchildren who are their age currently. I want them to understand the moment that we occupy is extraordinarily fraught, and I'm sure, should they ever see this, whatever generation sees this, to be critical and understand how fraught their own moment is, that the forces of fascism and dehumanization, outright slavery and genocide will not abate, no matter how successful we are going forward right now in 2016. We are in the midst of a really colossal, not just presidential election cycle in the United States, but a global election cycle. As we raise our consciousness to say, fascism anywhere is a threat. We're not going to tolerate it in Europe, we're not going to tolerate it in Africa, we're not going to tolerate it in the Middle East or Asia, it's certainly not going to tolerate it in North America or South America. And so that kind of global awareness, I believe, my grandkids, their grandkids, can look back at this moment of the Planet Deep South conference here at Jackson State and say, those were the people who helped us change the way we thought. This is where we started to see ourselves more fully as human beings. I don't think there's any greater gift we can give.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and thank you. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure to be here.